Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. It's a battle of the experts as an Iowa mother accused of strangling her own daughter with pajama pants faces a second trial.
If you were concluding what you're theorizing, then that's a circular argument.
Was little Cloe's death a murder or an accident?
A judge makes a decision on whether to release R&B singer R. Kelly from jail before trial. Plus, secret documents in the case against alleged sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell are becoming public.
And
we are not doing
No, it's okay.
we look further into body camera video of a New York judge and his wife fighting with the police. Law and Crime Daily covers court cases from coast to coast.
And welcome everybody to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Aaron Keller along with Buckmire and Terri Austin. Trial has resumed for an Iowa mother accused of murdering her child. Kelsie Thomas chose to be retried by a judge, not a jury, after her first trial ended with a hung jury. Authorities say she strangled her daughter Cloe with a pair of pajama pants. Thomas argues she confessed under police pressure and that her daughter's death was really an accident. The defense called its first and only witness a forensic pathologist who disagreed with the state's finding that little Cloe was murdered. Brian, take us through this testimony for us.
Yes, Aaron. So the defense's expert said he believed that Cloe did not die by manual strangulation. Dr. Thomas Young reviewed the autopsy report conducted by the state. He says it's possible Cloe got scratch marks on her neck from reaching up and trying to free herself from the accidental strangulation. He then demonstrated using Cloe's own pajama pants, what he calls a possible scenario from how Cloe died.
There are a wide variety of situations in which this can basically form a 3/4 inch in diameter transverse mark on the neck. One of them is to have it in this particular situation. This is probably about 5/8 of an inch, which is a little bit less than 3/4. But even having something like this, which is basically stretched out and even maybe, which may or may not have been twisted in any way, could have certainly made some kind of a mark as well. Having the presence of seams as well, where these are items that are a little stiffer and that they project, could also make certain kinds of marks in the neck that would be narrower. So this particular kind of garment is capable of making those kinds of marks on the child's neck, in my opinion.
State authorities believe this was murder, but the defense expert says state medical examiner's assessment is, in his own words, problematic. It relied on the defendant's confession to come to its conclusion, and the defense argues that confession isn't sound.
If basically Dr. Cavalier says that this is a strangulation, and then law enforcement investigators basically say, bring up the element of strangulation into the whole thing, into the mix, and then basically continue at it until basically she agrees with Dr. Cavalier's findings. That's essentially accepting what the premise is as a conclusion. It's a circular argument. Dr. Cavalier, by calling this a strangulation off the bat, essentially contaminates a second interview here with the person introducing the element of strangulation into the whole mix, when such a thing was not even spontaneously offered by any witness.
Dr. Young also testified at Thomas's first trial. His testimony this time around was consistent.
Thanks, Brian. Let's head now to Terri Austin with the prosecution cross-examination of this witness. Terri.
Actually, the state came out strong by having the doctor admit he's never conducted an autopsy of a child's strangulation. Prosecutors tried to poke holes in the doctor's credibility, but Young said this is his 500th time testifying as an expert in a trial.
Would you agree that the fundamental problem that you find with Dr. Cavalier is that she's attempting to determine a past event through an autopsy?
Yes.
You find that method unreliable?
Yes.
And
unreliable for certainty.
And as far as
if you want to posit as a possibility to investigate, holding that up as a hypothesis, that's legitimate. But to state something categorically and certainly, on something that is theoretical is not reliable, especially when it comes to past events, which are very complicated.
The defense indicated they would not be calling any additional witnesses and had one final question for the defendant.
Ultimately, you decided that you did not want to provide testimony in this case, correct?
Yes.
And that was your choice that you made freely, intelligently, and without any threats or duress or coercion from your defense team, correct?
Yes.
Both sides rested their case. Transcripts from witnesses called during the first trial were submitted to the judge for her to consider their testimony. Prosecutors and the defense will submit their closing arguments in writing by November 3rd. The judge will then issue her verdict at her own discretion.
So, Terri, the same judge presided over the defendant's first murder trial. She's reviewing most of the evidence, as you discussed, from the first case and then allowing attorneys to submit those closing arguments in writing. Do you think this gives each side enough of a fair shot to try the case this time around?
I do, Aaron, because the judge is going to remember everything that happened in the first case. And even more importantly, it all comes down to the testimony of the medical examiner versus this forensic expert. And I think the judge is going to be able to determine which side she believes, whether or not this was a strangulation, as the prosecution is trying to say, or whether or not this was just a hanging, as the defense is trying to say. He's basically saying if there are no witnesses, you cannot say there was a strangulation. So the judge is going to determine that herself.
So, Brian, does this add up to reasonable doubt? That's the big question. Did the defense evidence add up to reasonable doubt? If so, there has to be an acquittal. What do you think?
I would guess it does rise to the level of reasonable doubt, because the only way that the judge can vote otherwise would be to say that the defense's witness was not credible. It doesn't believe their testimony and has all the credibility to the prosecution's witness. But if both are credible and there are some level of doubt and that doubt is reasonable, I think that's a not guilty.
Many questions remaining in this case. The judge has it, and we'll get basically a decision on the judge's timetable. Brian and Terri, appreciate the insight. A judge has denied yet another attempt by R&B singer R. Kelly's attorneys to get him out of jail pending trial. Kelly's attorney used a recent jailhouse attack to argue that Kelly was unsafe behind bars and that he was a target in part because he's famous. A federal judge sitting in Chicago wrote that Kelly's attack was concerning but does not warrant an immediate release. The judge also said that the isolated incident does not suggest that the Federal Bureau of Prisons is incapable of safely housing R. Kelly. And still ahead here on Law and Crime Daily, a judge makes a key ruling on court papers which may help prosecutors convict the ex-girlfriend of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And later on in the broadcast, one of the alleged killers of a Connecticut mother is out of jail pending trial. When we return, find out what's behind the release of Kent Mawhinney and the alleged killing of Jennifer Dulos. A legal loss for Ghislaine Maxwell, the ex-girlfriend of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. A federal appeals court ruled that a 418-page deposition Maxwell gave during a civil suit in 2016 can be released. The Miami Herald sued to get the documents, which were part of a civil suit filed against Epstein by one of his accusers, Virginia Roberts Giuffre. The underlying case was settled in 2017, and Epstein died by suicide in 2018. Maxwell is in jail pending trial on charges she trafficked young girls. More than a year after a man in Dayton, Ohio was beaten to death with a baseball bat and his body burned, the feds indict 5 people for the crime. An unsealed indictment says Kelsie was abducted at gunpoint last summer and beaten to death at a home. Agents claim the abductors made ransom demands. Kelsie's burned remains were later found in a garage. All 5 charged, including Devin Love and Ryan Reese, are in custody. A security guard working for a TV station in Denver is in jail, charged with killing a man at dueling right-wing and left-wing protests in that city. Matthew Dolliff faces a second-degree murder charge. Police say Dolliff shot and killed Lee Keltner earlier this month after Keltner hit him in the side of the face with his hand and then sprayed him with pepper spray. Dolliff's lawyer is quoted in local news reports as saying the shooting was self-defense. A man in Wichita, Kansas is accused of threatening to kidnap the mayor over the city's COVID-19 mask ordinance. The Wichita Police Department says Meredith Doty was arrested on a charge of criminal threat. Doty allegedly sent text messages saying he was going to kidnap Mayor Brandon Whipple and slash his throat because of the mask mandate. The mayor learned about the texts after they were sent to another city official. In a video briefing, the mayor called the text horrendous.
They read me the text messages that this person was sending to someone else who had access to me and my address, and they were looking for my address so that they could, I guess, take part in executing a plan that would have maybe resulted in harm. In the end, though, until I'm voted out or until I am actually successfully assassinated, I will continue to be mayor. I will continue to do what I'm supposed to do with updates, with policy. I will not stop.
And moving along now to the East Coast, one of the men accused of playing a role in the murder of Connecticut mother Jennifer Dulos is out of jail on bond. Attorney Kent Mawhinney is accused of conspiracy to commit murder. His bail was reduced in part so he could visit his ailing father in Florida. Mawhinney is fitted with an ankle monitor so authorities can track his movements. He and Michelle Troconis are the only two defendants left to face trial for the presumed killing of Jennifer Dulos after alleged co-conspirator Fotis Dulos, the victim's husband, committed suicide earlier this year. Got to ask about this, Brian. Defendants' bond went from $2 million down to $246,000 in cash and property, some of his parents' property being put up as collateral here. That seems like a huge reduction to me. Is that normal?
It is and it isn't. It really depends. So the standard of changing bail is a change of circumstances that occurred from the last time bail was set. From what I understand, the change of circumstance is pretty big, that being that his father has cancer that's migrated through his body all the way into his spine. I'm not sure how long his father has or how bad the cancer is, but that's enough of a change of circumstances to maybe reduce the bail to allow him to see his ailing father, and of course, if it's a serious injury or ailment.
I mean, it certainly seems like there's some mercy involved in the decision here. So, Terry, we've got two defendants out on bail. Michelle Troconis is also out, and still no body yet for this poor mother who's been missing and presumed killed.
You know, it's not looking promising for the family of Jennifer Dulos. Time is passing, and although there is an incredible amount of circumstantial evidence, you know, we have blood, we have zip ties, we have video footage of plastic bags being discarded, there still is no body. And, you know, it's difficult to really surmise what happened, when it happened, and who was involved.
The state does have that evidence, though, and they are pushing forward with the two remaining cases out of the three that they originally filed. And still to come here on Law and Crime Daily, viral video from the case of a New York judge caught on body camera shoving a police officer as another was placing his wife in handcuffs. We dig further into what led to this confrontation right after the break. We are digging more tonight into nearly 2 hours of body camera video released by the Buffalo, New York Police Department. The recordings show a judge's wife arguing loudly with officers and the judge himself shoving a responding officer. Both the wife and the judge wound up in handcuffs and dropped a lot of names in government and on the police force in the process. Here's some of the fight and some of the judge's reaction. At one point, you'll hear the judge drop the name of Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown, who he calls a friend.
Ma'am, if you don't stop yelling, this is going to be a problem for you. I don't care. Okay, cool. Then get over here. You're not here to arrest me. I sure am. My son, no. You're not. We are not doing this right now. We are not doing No, it's okay. You better go. Let him arrest me. I don't care. Go. Come on, take You're going in the back of the car and we can deal with this. No, you have no idea. Okay. Put up with. Okay, put your hands behind your back or we are gonna have a problem. Put your hands behind your back. Hey! No. Arrest my wife, you're gonna be sorry. I don't care, let him. Let him. I don't care. I don't care.
I'm talking to my daughter who's a police officer. Where does your daughter work for? She's in B district. Right. My son's in C district. And listen, I'm good friends with Byron Brown. He's like, you know, what's up, Mark? Just ignore him. I'm talking like this kid punch me in the face and I'm getting a fair lip. I want to have my shirt ripped like this. He tore the shirt grabbing me and ripped my necklace off.
Okay.
Okay, like I'm fighting the guy.
At one point, an officer puts the judge on the phone with a police supervisor. Listen to this.
Lieutenant gave me instructions to, this is Detective Constantino, to bring the phone over to you and let you talk. I believe it's on speaker now.
Oh, hey, Mark.
They're saying that you pushed an officer. You wouldn't do that, would you?
You know what? He dragged Maria. When the two girls were on Maria, he was dragging Maria across the street and actually was taking her down on my front lawn. And I basically said, listen, just like talk to her. And I pushed him and I said, don't friggin' tackle her. And I pushed him. I apologized to him, Mark, right after that because I said, listen, I respect you guys in law enforcement. You know, I go, my daughter's a police officer, my son-in-law's a police officer, all my family's police officers. I never mentioned Byron Brown's name. What we said is that the guy across the street parks the vehicle, which is a Byron Brown owned vehicle, like he blocks driveways, and they did it with all 4 cars tonight. So yes, I was wrong by telling the police officer. I pushed him and said, listen, don't tackle her like that. I said, she'll talk to you. And, I don't know what every other neighbor said, Mark, but trust me,
I know that this has been going on for like 10 years, but
Mark,
how's this going to stop?
Mark, listen, I understand it. I was in the house when I was bringing the dog back, and I called 911 because the car is blocking like a quarter of the driveway apron. And then when I came out, these girls, they had Maria in a chokehold.
When we come back, what led to the confrontation? Neighbors who witnessed the altercation provide new clues into what went wrong and who were defending themselves against an alleged attack. The story picks up when we return. We're back now with body camera video of a New York judge shoving a police officer and dropping names of high-profile friends. The police never filed charges against the judge or his wife, perhaps, at least in part, because several neighbors told responding officers that the judge and his wife were being victimized.
They wrestled, they had Maria in a chokehold,
Okay.
They went back and forth.
Okay, I guess my main concern and the issue that I'm running into is these are the people with clear injuries. So when
injuries?
Yes, when I come into this with, not knowing all this,
I don't know anything about any injury. I don't know about any injuries.
Okay. Well, no, and that's why I'm telling you, from my perspective, what I've got is the people over here injured, the people over there intoxicated, and that's why they're in the back of the truck.
It's hard to believe that they're in cuffs and they're on their porch.
Well, again, this isn't a 20-year thing. We're here for the immediate.
Understood.
So, okay.
Understood.
No, I do. I appreciate your perspective. I'm going to just check with those neighbors as well, see what we got.
So that was one neighbor. Another neighbor also said she saw the judge and his wife being choked and attacked, and the judge and his wife trying to get away. Here again is body camera video. And by the way, this witness dropped that her husband was the city clerk.
And all of a sudden we heard a lot of yelling and screaming going on. I was actually thinking it was somewhere over here. I had no idea. I just walked down my driveway, and when I walked down, I saw them choking Maria by her neck.
Okay.
Choking her in the middle of the street.
Okay.
I yelled for my husband, city clerk of Buffalo, to call 911 that those two fat were choking Maria Grassani.
Okay.
They tried to get away from them, and they did, to their driveway, and then they once again attacked them in their own driveway.
Okay.
It was them attacking them.
Okay. That seems to track with a lot of what we've been hearing.
Yes.
Like I
and
said,
they've been troublemakers with everybody.
Okay, and like I told the other neighbors, the reason that the other two were in the car right now is because we approached.
I know they're excited.
Well,
mad.
They
mad.
were causing problems.
To,
then when we tried to detain them, they
I
were
know.
coming at us very aggressively.
I
That's
know,
why they're
I
in the
get
cars.
it.
Just
I
explaining
get it.
that. But I do appreciate having the kind of everyone else's
What I witnessed
perspective.
was them attacking them.
Okay.
And them trying to get away from them.
Okay, well I appreciate that. We'll definitely take all that into consideration.
A senior advisor to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo responded to the situation since the judge is a longtime political ally who was appointed to the roughly $175,000 a year job by Governor Cuomo. The advisor's comments read in part, Court of Claims judges are appointed for a fixed term and only if they are deemed highly qualified by an independent judicial screening committee and confirmed by the state Senate. Once that happens, they're part of a separate branch of government, and disciplinary issues are under the purview of the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct. So that's the view from the executive branch here about a friend of the governor. So Terri, got to ask this though, two sides to every story, right? It's possible, or I should say, is it possible that the judge was totally in the clear for defending himself and his wife? Are they more sinned against than sinning here based on what the neighbors said?
Well, the additional footage does show more of the story, but the bottom line is, even if he had been defending his wife, he still assaulted a police officer, and there's no question that he received special treatment. And in fact, they acted as though they were privileged because they knew all of these individuals and they were dropping names. Here's what I think at the end of the day. Anyone breaking the law, regardless of their race, their economic status, their political influence, should all be treated the same. And the question I have is, did that happen here?
I think we all have that question, and that was perfectly said, Terri. So, Brian, you're a public defender. Do your clients, when they're in the back of squad cars, get calls from detectives or supervisors asking to clear up situations, be allowed to give additional versions of stories, and just have their word believed? Or
Even, what do you mean word believed, Aaron? He incriminated himself. He said that he shoved an officer. I practice in New York. You know what that is? That's Penal Law 121-18. That is menacing an officer, putting them in reasonable fear of physical injury. That's a D-class felony. No one gets that. You know who definitely didn't get that? Attica Scott, who was arrested by a D felony for protesting. Same situation.
That's the Breonna Taylor case in another state. Hey, great discussion. We have to wrap up. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams. In the exploding legal and true crime genre, Law & Crime is the only network that has it all.
Good evening and welcome.
This is a complicated case.
Don't really jump to conclusions.
We break down the case of a serial killer.
Another day of drama between both sides.
From multiple live trials daily to original and compelling programming, the Law & Crime Network is everywhere, and we invite you inside the jury box. This is Law & Crime.